Good morning, y'all. I want to try something a little different with this forecast because I think there's an important gap in how severe weather gets covered. A gap that leaves communities genuinely underprepared for what happens not just during a storm, but in the days and weeks that follow it. We talk a lot about the meteorology of severe weather events. We talk about CAPE values and helicity and wind shear and tornado tracks and hail diameters. And all of that is important, critically important, because understanding the physics is what drives effective preparation. But what we talk about less, and what I want to be the main subject of this video, is the downstream consequences. The problems that do not announce themselves with a tornado siren or a wireless emergency alert. The problems that show up in the days after the storm has moved through and people have stepped outside and said, okay, we made it through, only to discover that making it through the storm itself is not the same thing as making it through what the storm left behind. This storm sequence, the one developing right now for the coming week, is going to cause serious problems, not just during the event window, after it. And I want to make sure every community in its path understands exactly what those problems are and exactly how to prepare for them before the first storm even fires. Let me start with the straight line wind threat, because I think it is the hazard within this sequence that gets the least attention relative to how much damage it is actually going to cause. When most people think about severe weather damage, they think about tornadoes. Tornado-shaped destruction, narrow, violent, unmistakable. And yes, this sequence has a genuine tornado threat, particularly during the Tuesday supercell phase, and I am going to talk about that in full detail. But there is another form of severe weather wind damage that is broader, more democratic in its destruction, and in many ways more disruptive to communities and infrastructure than any individual tornado. And that is the squall line straight line wind event that is going to accompany the overnight and pre-dawn hours of this multi-day sequence. As the discrete supercell phase from Tuesday's initiation consolidates into an organized squall line during Tuesday evening and overnight, the rear inflow jet, the current of air driven into the backside of the mature storm system, is going to produce surface wind gusts along the bowing segments of that squall line that in the most intense cores can reach 70 to 90 miles per hour, possibly higher in the most aggressive bow echo segments. 70 to 90 miles per hour is not tornado wind. But let me tell you what it is, because it is important. 70 to 90 miles per hour is the wind speed that snaps mature hardwood trees off at the trunk. It is the wind speed that takes the roof off a structure that was not quite up to code. It is the wind speed that flips trailers and overturns semi-trucks on exposed highway corridors. It is the wind speed that takes down power transmission lines, not just in one location, but across hundreds of miles of corridor simultaneously. And when that kind of wind damage occurs simultaneously across a 500-mile swath stretching from central Oklahoma through western Arkansas and into western Tennessee, which is what this squall line is capable of producing as it pushes through the region overnight, Tuesday into Wednesday, the infrastructure problems that result are not a one-day story. They are a multi-day to multi-week story. And that is what I mean when I say this storm is going to cause serious problems. Let me give you the history on this, because history is the most powerful teacher I have available for communicating the scale of what widespread squall line wind damage actually means for communities. In August 2020, a derecho, a squall line system with sustained widespread damaging winds, swept from eastern Nebraska across Iowa and into Illinois in a single day. Wind gusts reached 100 miles per hour in central Iowa, and an estimated 140 miles per hour near Cedar Rapids. Nearly 2 million homes and businesses lost power. Outages lasted for days in many locations and weeks in some. Iowa's agricultural infrastructure, grain bins, corn that was within weeks of harvest field drainage systems, was devastated. The storm caused more than $11 billion in damage, and that was one day, one squall line, one event. The mechanism I am describing for this coming week, a squall line with 70 to 90 mile per hour wind gusts pushing across a 500-mile corridor that includes major population centers from Oklahoma City through Little Rock through Memphis, is not a derecho of the 2020 Iowa magnitude. But it is the same class of event, the same physics, and the same category of downstream infrastructure consequences. When a squall line takes down power lines across a corridor that broad, utility crews from across the region have to be mobilized simultaneously to address simultaneous outages across multiple states. The first communities to lose power wait, while crews prioritize transmission infrastructure. The last communities to be restored might wait days. In mid-April heat, and the WPC has specifically described summer-like temperatures in the low to mid-90s arriving across the region by midweek, those power outages are not just inconvenient. They become a health emergency for elderly residents, for people on home oxygen or dialysis, for families with infants and young children who cannot regulate their body temperature. The problems the storm causes do not end when the squall line moves through. They are just beginning. Now let me talk about the tornado threat specifically, because it is real and it deserves the same kind of detailed treatment alongside the wind and infrastructure discussion. The Tuesday supercell phase of this event, the discrete, organized, rotating thunderstorm phase that develops in the afternoon ahead of the squall line consolidation, is the phase that carries the highest individual tornado potential. The atmospheric environment the SPC is describing for Tuesday afternoon features strong deep layer shear across the southern and central plains, a moderately unstable air mass in place from the southern plains northeastward into the Mississippi Valley, and a mid-level jet streak ejecting across the southern high plains that is going to drive rapid supercell organization. The SPC's own day 4-8 language states explicitly that supercells with large hail, wind damage, and tornadoes are expected Tuesday afternoon and evening, and that an upgrade is possible once confidence increases on the timing of the ejecting trough. Tornadoes are expected, not possible, expected. And an upgrade beyond the current forecast risk category is on the table as this event moves into the short-range window. The geographic corridor where the Tuesday supercell tornado threat is highest runs from north-central Texas through central and eastern Oklahoma and into southeastern Kansas, Wichita Falls, to Duncan, to Ardmore, to McAllister, to Muskogee, to Tulsa. Within that corridor, communities need to have their shelter plans executed, their backup power sources ready, their weather radios on, and y'all call set up for the overnight window. Because even though the supercell initiation phase is afternoon, the squall line that consolidates from that activity overnight is going to carry embedded QLCS tornadoes and 90-mile-per-hour wind gusts into Arkansas, western Tennessee, and western Kentucky while people are asleep. Y'all call calls your phone directly when a tornado warning covers your GPS coordinates. Not a push notification, a phone call. The kind that rings through Do Not Disturb and sleep mode and gets you moving to your shelter in the middle of the night. $14.95 for a full year of protection. The link is right there in the description of this video. Please set it up before Tuesday. The hail problem from this storm deserves its own dedicated discussion because it is going to cause the kind of property damage that takes months to repair, and that hits communities in a specific and particularly disruptive way. The atmospheric environment for Tuesday: Cape values in the 2,000 to 3,000 joule range, cold upper-level temperatures driven by the ejecting trough, mid-level lapse rates that support explosive updraft development, is the environment that produces very large hail inside the strongest supercell cores. Baseball-sized hail, 2 3/4 inches in diameter, is likely in the highest intensity storm cores. In some solutions, softball-sized hail, 4 inches or larger, is possible in the most extreme updraft environments. Let me explain what that means as a community problem rather than just a meteorological statistic. When baseball-sized to softball-sized hail falls across a populated corridor, the insurance claims that result are not individual household events. They are a regional economic shock. Every vehicle on the road or in an unprotected driveway that gets hit, windshields shattered, hoods dented through, roofs collapsed. Every exposed HVAC unit on the exterior of commercial buildings, every skylight on schools and warehouses and churches, every standing crop within the hail swath, every roof that was marginal before the storm and is now a complete replacement. In the aftermath of a major hail event across a populated corridor, roofing contractors and auto glass installers are booked weeks to months out. Insurance adjusters are working 18-hour days across multiple counties. Tarps go on roofs while families wait for materials and labor to become available. The storm causes problems on impact, and those problems compound for months. Please, before Tuesday afternoon, get your vehicles under cover if you have any covered parking available. Even a carport is better than nothing. Even a neighbor's garage you can borrow. Because the hail that is possible in the strongest cores of Tuesday's supercells is not the kind you brush off with a laugh. It is the kind that totals vehicles outright and requires roof replacement on homes. The flash flooding problem from this storm is the one I am most worried about in terms of its potential to catch people off guard, because flash flooding tends to arrive in a context where people are already overwhelmed managing the other hazards and do not have the attention left to monitor the water. The multi-day nature of this storm sequence, rounds of heavy rain from Saturday through at least Tuesday, in some locations totaling 4 to 6 inches or more, means that by the time Tuesday's most intense convection arrives, the ground across a broad swath of the affected region is going to be at or near saturation. In that saturated soil environment, Tuesday's rainfall rates of 1 to 2 inches per hour inside the strongest storm cores are not going to be absorbed by the ground before they reach drainage systems. They are going to run off immediately. Creek channels that looked fine on Saturday morning are going to be running bank full by Monday evening, and they are going to respond to Tuesday's additional rainfall by jumping their banks fast, in minutes rather than hours, in some cases with virtually no warning for the communities downstream. the Red River drainage basin in North Texas and southern Oklahoma, the Cimarron and Canadian River systems in central Oklahoma, the Arkansas River through eastern Oklahoma into Arkansas. All of these systems are going to be receiving cumulative rainfall totals that push them toward flood stage, not because of a single catastrophic event, but because of the relentless accumulation from round after round after round. And the roads that cross these systems, the state highways and county roads and farm tracks that cross low water bridges and flood-prone corridors, are going to start going underwater well before Tuesday's storms even arrive, which means communities need to start thinking now about which routes may become unavailable and what that means for their access to work, to healthcare, to emergency services. Flash flooding kills people every severe weather season. It kills them because they drive into water they thought they could cross. Please, every single time you see water on a road, any amount, any depth, turn around. The problem the flood causes is not worth the time you save by trying to cross it. There's a fifth problem this storm is going to cause that almost never gets talked about in the severe weather forecast conversation, and I want to make sure it gets the attention it deserves. That problem is the agricultural impact. Right now, across the southern plains, in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and into parts of Missouri, spring field work is in full swing. Farmers are planting. Early season corn and cotton have germinated and are in the most vulnerable stage of their growth cycle. Pastures are greening up, livestock are on spring grass, calves are being born, and into that agricultural landscape, this storm sequence is going to deliver baseball-sized hail, 70-mile-per-hour winds, and 4 to 6 inches of accumulated rainfall. Hail at this size and intensity destroys standing crops completely within its swath. Not damaged, not reduced yield potential, destroyed. Wind at this intensity can collapse grain storage structures, the large metal bins and corrugated steel storage facilities that hold the grain from last year's harvest that has not yet been sold or transported. Flooding of the scale. This sequence can produce soaks fields that were being prepared for spring planting, compacting the soil, washing away fertilizer that has already been applied, and delaying field work by days to weeks during a window when every day matters for crop timing. These impacts are not just economic abstractions. They are real losses for real farming families and real communities across the region. And because agricultural losses from storm events often develop slowly, the full extent of crop damage may not be known for days, the impact on soil conditions may not be clear until farmers try to get equipment back into the field. They tend to be underestimated in the immediate aftermath of an event when the visible, dramatic damage is getting all the attention. I am telling you about the agricultural problem now, before the storm, because I think farming communities in the path of this event deserve to be thinking about their specific risk exposures and making whatever protective decisions are available to them before Tuesday arrives. So let me bring this all together with a clear, specific action list, because the reason I spent so much time in this video talking about the downstream problems is precisely to make the preparation feel more urgent and more concrete than the standard check your shelter and charge your devices guidance. Yes, check your shelter. Yes, charge your devices. But also, if you have a vehicle that you cannot get under cover, consider whether there is anywhere in your area you could park it protected on Tuesday. A neighbor's garage, a covered parking structure, a commercial carport. If you have elderly or medically vulnerable family members in the affected area who depend on powered medical equipment, call them today and make sure they have a plan for a multi-day power outage, a backup power source, a warm place to go if the power goes out and the temperatures rise, a way to reach emergency services if they cannot self-evacuate. If you are a farmer in the corridor from Texas through Oklahoma and into Kansas, assess which of your livestock, your stored grain, and your equipment are most exposed to the combination of large hail and high winds that this sequence can produce. If you are in a community near a river, creek, or drainage system, know what your emergency exit routes are before those routes start going underwater. Because once they do, the window to act closes faster than most people expect. And set up Y'all Call. Please, the overnight window of this event is going to produce warnings while communities are asleep. And the phone call from Y'all Call is the only alert system that is guaranteed to cut through everything and wake you up when it matters. $14.95 for a full year. Link in the description. Do it today. I'm going live the moment the first supercells initiate Tuesday afternoon, and I'm staying live through the entire overnight squall line event until every warning has expired. Subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, and I will see y'all in the live stream. Stay safe out there. I love every single one of you.